All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the things. So I just posted an announcement because um, I got an email just now. If you have gaming questions, I'm always happy to take those after class. I just don't like to do it at the start of class because it is not for everyone, and I certainly don't want to exclude people. Here are the topics we're covering today. We just got an announcement yesterday, very late yesterday, recognizing the Juneteenth holiday, which, if you're not familiar, is it's typically associated with the end of slavery. Very specifically, it is when a Union general, after the conclusion of the Civil War, uh, basically started forcibly freeing slaves in Texas. So it's a holiday that I think very much deserves recognition, especially in the time that we are in. We just got the announcement today that summer session 2 classes on June 19 are canceled. So that is Friday. So just to clarify, no class Friday. Now, bear with me as I am going to need to update and retool the course schedule a bit to accommodate this. Likely, what will happen is I will shift everything back one day, and the last lecture topic may be changed. I'm going to kind of rework the schedule a bit because it's not just about when the lectures are, it's also about the homeworks lining up with the lectures. I will try to get a new course schedule up today and then update the reading list along with it. Apologies that the reading list didn't go up until late last night. There were a number of issues that demanded my attention. Some of them related to the Juneteenth cancellation. So we will not have class this Friday. So tomorrow will be our last day of class for the week. As a result of that, Quiz 1 still went out today. Or, excuse me, Quiz 2 still went out today. Quiz 3 was originally going to go out Friday. It will not. Homework 1, however, will still go out Friday. Additionally, I will plan to hold my office hours on Friday. Yes. I answered that question right as you typed it. Yes, so I will still hold my office hours Friday. Um, but I will not force my TAs to do so. I will ask my TAs and let them decide. I don't know if we have TA office hours on Friday. Actually, let me take a look. Okay, we don't have any TA office hours on Friday anyway, so my office hours will still meet on Friday. Um, so with that, today we're going to be talking about variable scope, pass by value, pass by reference, and the fact that this technically doesn't exist in Java, and then array lists. So these topics all kind of relate to functions and loops, as we've talked about before. Um, from there, we're going to finish up on array list. Tomorrow is actually a very important class because tomorrow we are going to be discussing classes, objects, and instances, and what all those words mean. And this is the basis of much of the rest of the course. So very much make every effort to attend tomorrow. There's only, well, now 18 classes. So do make effort to attend all of them. But certainly tomorrow is going to be a very important lecture topic. Some reminders very quickly. Quiz 0 is due tomorrow. Quiz 1 is posted and due tomorrow. So Quiz 1 should now be visible. It will be due tomorrow as well. Homework 0 is also due tomorrow. That is the coding bat. I've actually already seen a lot of people already make some pretty serious progress on that, so that's good. Homework 1 will be released tomorrow. And I don't know if the deadline is going to change. I will let you know as soon as I know if the exam day will change. It may be moved from next Friday to Monday because of this holiday. I need some time to consider that, and I will make a decision today when I re-upload the course schedule. Are there any questions about any of the things I just said? Oh, Collab says it's due the 19th? Okay, if it says that, I'm going to leave it the 19th. Okay. Yeah. If I ever post it with the wrong date, I mean, unless it's something hilarious, like if I say quiz 1, okay. Let me make sure of that because I just posted it today. But if it does say Friday, then certainly that will be the day. Um, Let me just make sure of that. I know I meant to make it due tomorrow night. I thought I'd said the 18th. Let me check. Uh, it says the 18th for quiz 1 or quiz 2, I mean. Yeah, they both say the 18th. And that is, by the way, both quizzes. So just real quick, both quizzes are due on the 18th. And that is not an oversight. Just a note, the syllabus quiz can be attempted multiple times. Currently, I have 30 submissions. Not all of them are 10 points. This is the only quiz you can attempt multiple times. Quiz 2 is going to be a one-shot. You only get one chance, and you won't immediately see your score. You won't see your score until after the deadline. From there, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, so I did say the 19th, so homework 0 will be due Friday. I'm certainly not going to move that up. What is the format of quiz 2? Multiple choice. The quizzes are very, very rarely not going to be multiple choice. What is the time limit? 1 hour, which is more than sufficient. It might be a half hour, but it's 10 multiple choice questions in either case. Yeah, it's there is a time limit, but it's the quizzes will generally be multiple choice. The exam, you'll have a bit more exotic questions, but the quizzes are unlikely to be anything other than multiple choice. Any other format questions? Are quizzes open note? All quizzes and exams in this class are open note, open textbook, open IDE, open internet. The only rule is nothing like Stack Overflow or Chegg or any other type of forum. And the reason for that is then you are asking another person to answer the question, as opposed to using an online resource to help yourself answer the question. So that's where I draw the line. And the simple reason for that is I mean, first, our quizzes in 2110 are open note regardless, but the exams are open note while we are online, simply because it's not policeable, and so by putting in such a rule, we are only punishing honest students. So we don't want to do that. Any other logistics questions? And I do apologize, as I got the email, because we got an email last night. It was like 4 o'clock, recognizing the Juneteenth holiday. Is the Java API allowed? Yes. In fact, we're going to go over Java API, some aspects of it today, namely with ArrayLists. Yeah. Our reading separated by different texts. So there are 2 textbooks, although one, if you look in the syllabus, it describes. Hang on, I'm trying to pull it up. So we have the Big Java. This is actually a textbook that you can buy. You can buy a PDF version or a physical copy. I actually think this is a legitimately fantastic resource. I legitimately really, really like this Java textbook. From there, there's a second, albeit it is free online. I don't recommend buying it. And I'll go ahead and drop the link in chat, just because if you haven't seen it in the syllabus. This textbook, you do need to fill out a form to get it. They're not releasing it. They just want to track who's using it. We, the University of Virginia, are using it. They know we're using it. That is the MSD book. So all the readings, if you take a look at the reading list, why did the PDF got cut off? Sorry. Let me I thought I had re-uploaded this, but apparently I had not. I'm not. The PDF got cut off. I will correct this such that these line up. But anytime you see MSD textbook, that's the one I just linked. I apologize for this being out of whack. I thought I had already fixed that. Give me 1 second here, because I want to fix it before we proceed. That's weird, because on my local machine, this PDF is fine, but when I uploaded it online, it messed up. I'm fixing right now. Apologies for that. Okay, that fixed it. Now I just need to re-upload. Apologies again for this very awkward delay. Sorry about this. The last part about homework 1 is cut off the screen. That's just because I scrolled back up to address something. Homework 1 will be released tomorrow. There we go. Okay, I fixed it. Sorry about the delay. I thought I had fixed it last night, and apparently I hadn't. So now it lines up better. So anytime you see MSD textbook, that is that online textbook that I just dropped the link for. That link is also in the syllabus. Every other reading is the big Java textbook. So with that, and keep in mind that while there is a lot of chapters here, these first 3 things are just how do you do something in Python or how do you do something in Java that you've already done in Python. None of this information is new, and even ArrayLists is questionably new. As you'll see later, it's going to look very familiar. So with that, any last questions about logistics before we jump into the lecture material? Otherwise, what I want to do is first look at this code. I have a variable here called int x. I set it equal to 5. I then call a function get value plus 1, which takes x, passes it to this function. This function does x plus plus, and then returns x. This is going to print 6. 5 plus 1 is 6. Hopefully this isn't news to people. But what prints here? On line 12, on that code I just highlighted, what prints? 5 or 6? Not rhetorical. I want people typing in chat. Pick a side. We're at war. Is it going to print 5 or 6? Seeing a lot of 5s. And that's actually good. If you do think it's 6, and maybe you're afraid to type it just because of the peer pressure effect, that's fine. It is 6, or it is going to be 5. Let's just illustrate that real quick. And I want to clarify why this is happening, so we're going to take a trip over to the whiteboard. Okay. So we have our stack and our heap. the thing about the stack is so far I've actually kind of been a little bit not completely correct about how the stack works. See, the stack is not just one thing. The stack is a series of boxes that kind of serve as function calls. For example, when I start the program, I start at the bottom of the stack inside of a box that is labeled main. And the reason that this box is called main is because my function here is called main. And this box is going to keep track of the line of code that I am at up here. This is the instruction pointer. It tells me what line of code I'm at, how far through my program I am. And initially, I start at line 9. And any variable that I create is created on the stack inside of this box. So when I say on line 9, int x equals 5, I create a box labeled x, and because it's a primitive data type, I just store 5 right in that box. From there, we proceed to the next line, line 10. And at that point, on line 10, we have another function call. And that function call is getValue plus 1. What this does is, because I have a function call, it is going to pause execution here at line 10. This is going to be paused. This is my best attempt to draw the typical pause symbol. And from there, we create another box on top of main. Stacks build from the bottom up. And this box is going to be for the function we called. Specifically, getValue plus 1. And in that function, you will notice right here that this function takes in a value x. And so whatever value we pass to the function, and I notice I said value, not variable, because there is a difference. Whatever value I pass to the function takes this value, or this variable x takes that value. So going back to the whiteboard, I have a variable x, and it takes the value I pass, which is 5. And then from there, the function starts. I'm at line 3 here. Technically, I'm at line 3. I haven't entered the function yet. I've just set up my initial variable. Now, the key to note is that these two x variables, while they have the same name, they are different variables. They are stored at different places in memory. And as a result of this, any change I make to this x does not affect this x. They are just different variables. It's irrelevant that they have the same name. Whether or not they have the same name, they are in two different scopes. And so when we create a variable, that variable exists from the point we create it until the closing bracket. If out here I said something like x equals 1, that wouldn't even make sense, because there is no x. X doesn't exist. X doesn't know what to be here because x is created only in main or inside this function. Variables only exist in the scope they are created, and this is the scope of the x variable. This is the scope of the x variable for the function getValue plus 1. And they are different scopes, therefore different variables. So heading back to the whiteboard, I then proceed to line 4. And at line 4, I say x plus plus, which is 6. I then return 6. And so when I return, that's going to send the value 6 down to the previous function, and then it's going to pop or remove this function off the stack. So the function that I just called finished, therefore I don't need it anymore, therefore I remove it. I then resume whatever function is at the top of the stack, which in this case is main. I unpause this function. I take this value 6 and I plug it into line 10. And so effectively what happens is at line 10, this gets replaced by 6 because that's the return value. From there, I print 6. I then proceed to line 11, where I print the value of x, and the value of x is unchanged. The value of x is 5. Now, this may seem simple to a lot of you, but I'm about to make it a bit complicated. Let's do a similar function, but slightly different. Public static int get array value plus 1 int array x. And what this function is going to do is this is going to get the value at index 0 of the array plus 1. And I'm going to write this in a very specific way. x0, that is the first value of the array, plus, return x0. And now, let's use this same code, except now I'm going to say int array, and let's call this a, equals 517. It's an array with the values 517. I'm then going to do get array value plus 1 and pass the array a, and then I'm going to print a0. And now, I'm going to put a little line here so that way I can tell where the difference is in chat. Now, here is my question. This is still going to print 6. Does this print 5 or 6? Pick a side. Type 5 or 6 in chat, whichever you think it is. If you don't know, pick one. Flip a coin. But is line 27 going to print 5 or 6? Not as unanimous a decision here. Some people are saying 6, but could that just be because last time it was 5? Let's actually take a look at this, and let's diagram this before we run the code to see what happens. So first, now we're at main, and I'm going to skip the first part of main because we've already done it. So main, I have the value x is 5. I'm now going to be at line... I'm going to start at this line, line 24, and proceed down. So at line 24, I create a value a. And my question to you is, what goes in this box? Does the array go in this box? This is at line 24. Do I write in here something like 5, 3, or 5, 1, 7? Is that where I put my array? Based on what we talked about yesterday, is that what I do? Correct. I don't put the value of the array here because the value of the array is stored on the heap. And so, when I create my array 517, I create on the heap an array that contains 517. And let's say that this address is C000. I'm just making up an address here, C000. What is stored in A then is C000. That is, it's a pointer to this place. Now, when I call the function, in this case, the function is get array value plus 1, which is up here. I'm just going to abbreviate this on the whiteboard to get array val. I'm at line 13, and I have a variable x that takes on the value of a. What does this mean x is equal to? What would x be equal to? Would it be equal to this array? No, because whenever I pass a value to a function, I pass whatever is stored in this box on the stack. And what is stored in this box is C00. So remember how I said that the value of the array on the stack is the address? That is, you can think of it like a piece of paper with the address written on it. This X is a different piece of paper with the same address. And so that means that it points to the same array. You can think of this like if this marker were my array, I have my left hand being something that points to it, and my right hand something that points to it. Both my hands are pointing to the same thing, but they are two different hands. I can manipulate them independently. But if I say, hey, right hand, take the cap off the marker you're pointing to, notice that the marker my left hand pointing to is also affected by this change. And so, then on line 20 or on line 14, when I say x0 plus plus, I follow my array to x, I go to the 0th index, I increment it by 1, it becomes 6. I then return 6, same as I did before, at line 15, which means I pop this function off the stack. 6 gets returned, and at line 25, we print this value 6. Okay, that's fine. But now, when I say print A0, which is on line 27, well, we go to A, we come up, and oh look, the value that's printed is not 5, it's 6. This shows, in this case, two different behaviors. Two different things happened here. In this case, with the integer, the value of x did not change. The value of x did not change. But in this case, the contents of the array did change. And the reason for that is because the variable a is not a value variable. It is a reference variable. That is to say, a is the address, as we show on the whiteboard. It is not holding the value of the array, it's telling me where the array is. And that distinction matters. And so as a result of this, we get two different behaviors. In the case of printing x, it prints 5. In the case of printing A0, it prints 6. And that's because A0 got modified there. Are there any questions about that? Now, technically speaking, we often think of this, that is, when we're passing A, we're passing a reference to the array A. We think of that as pass by reference. Technically in Java, this is not pass by reference. It is pass by value, but the value of A is not the array. The value of A is the address of the array. So it is pass by value, as you would call it in most languages. Are there any questions about this? So no, anytime you're using a reference variable, and arrays, strings, and all objects, which we'll talk about later, are all reference variables, you get a pass by you're passing by value, but the value you're passing is the memory address. However, this can be somewhat inconsistent when it comes to strings. Let's write one more function. Public static int. I'm just going to call this get plural string. And this is going to take in a string word. And this is going to say word plus equals s. Return word. Oh, sorry, this shouldn't be int, this should be string. Same exercise. String b equals cat. System.out.println get plural string b. System.out.println b. Based on what I've just talked about, let me put another. What is going to print on line 37? Cat or cats? Cat or cats? Again, type 1 in chat. Even if you're not sure, flip a coin. Which is it going to be? I'm seeing people say cat, and I'm seeing people say cats. Mostly cats. Now, if you just directly applied what I just said about arrays, you would see cats. Right? But if I run this, it will print cat. And that may seem confusing, because that may seem to fly in the face of what I just said about reference types. And strings are reference types, but there's a special fact about strings that we need to take a moment to discuss. You see, we can use this same example and we can say, okay, so I have my string b. This is going to be at line 34. And this creates, and again, it's some memory address. Let's say this is D080. So D080. And in that space, I have a string, and that string is cat. And when I pass this to the function, same as before, create a box on top. I'm just going to call this plural for short. Plural. Sorry, I wrote with my marker weird. Not fine. Plural. And then at line, so at line 18. At line 18, the string word contains the same address, D080, which points to the same place. But there's something you should know about strings. Strings are something called immutable. Strings are immutable. Does anyone know what the word immutable means? I'll give you a hint. This part, mutable, comes from the word mutate. So if something is immutable, exactly, it cannot be changed. Exactly, it cannot be modified. It cannot be changed. This string that is cat will forever be cat, and it can never change. But I can make a new string. And that's what happens on line 19. See, on line 19, I say, okay, this string plus equals s, but what Java actually does is it says, well, I can't change this string, so let me just create a new string. And that new string will be cat plus s, cats. And because this is a new string, it's in a different place in memory. Let's say D100. And then when we say word plus equals that, what we mean, therefore, is word now instead is going to point to this value. So I've updated my address of word to be D100. So now notice my two variables, my two strings, aren't just two different variables. They are actually also two different strings. I've created a different string for cats. And as a result of this, when I print the return value, it's going to print cats. But when I print the value of B, B's address hasn't changed. So B points to cat. Arrays, so let's just real quick, mutable and immutable. Arrays are mutable. You can say in an array something like A1 equals 5. Strings are immutable. There is no function for a string to say change that to O. Make this word cut. There's no function that does that. You cannot modify this string. You can make a new string that contains part of it, but you can't modify a string once it is created. So strings are immutable. And as a result, immutable things behave in terms of the way functions pass things back and forth. These behave like primitives when it comes to passing between functions. They behave like primitives when it comes to passing between functions. Arrays do not behave like primitives. So that's the distinction. That is why it prints cat instead of cats. So strings are special. Most objects, it would print cats, but strings are special in this case. Are there any questions about that? And there are other immutable types, but for now, just worry about string. So B becomes different variables from each other. I'm not sure what you mean by B becomes a different variable. So this variable is B, and its address never changes in this code. I could change it, but for now it doesn't change. This variable word, its address does change because I try to modify it, and the way Java modifies strings is it just creates a new string. So after this line of code, the address of B and the address of word are different. Before that line of code, once I call the function, word and B have the same address. No, it's not B becomes word, it's word becomes B. B exists first. Because remember, we always run the main function first. So B exists, and then I pass B to this function, and so word receives the address of B and takes on that value. So word and B, at this point, when I call the function, so here, word and B have the same address. The second I try to modify word, word has a different memory address now. So yes, initially word takes on and becomes B. Because B exists first, then I call the function. Inside of the function, at this point, B and word have the same address. So B and word, same address. Word's address has changed. B's has not. Also, I should note, B doesn't actually exist in this function. Because of the scope, there is no B. I can't do something like B plus equals S, because there is no B, because B is only existing in this scope. but the value of b is passed to the function here. So remember, this doesn't pass the variable, this passes the value, that is the memory address that b points to. Sorry about the pings. Are there any questions about that? Now, I should note this, when I say immutable things act like primitives, is it fair to say word creates a copy of... Hang on. If the plural function was run twice, would the cat's memory address be replaced? So it would be a third memory address. So, like, if I ran it again... And keep in mind that once I pop... So here's the other thing, and this is something I maybe didn't get to. So this is to David Russell's question. Once the function get plural string finishes... Sorry, my chair sometimes will knock that over. Once this function finishes and I pop it, notice that the word variable doesn't exist anymore, right? So therefore, there's nothing actually pointing to this string anymore, and so Java actually just deletes it. So after I've called the function, that variable is gone forever. Java gives that memory back to the computer to be used for other things. This variable still exists because there's still something on the stack pointing to it. Word copies b's value, but b's value is not the string. B's value is the memory address. So word copies this, not this. Primitive data types are not immutable. Primitive data types, immutability doesn't apply, really. Primitive data types, I guess, are very much mutable. I can say, for example, x++, and that is that demonstrates that x is mutable. X is mutable. I just changed it. X's memory address hasn't changed as a result of this. Only so far that we've covered, strings are immutable. So we're saying that immutables behave like primitive data types in most cases, at least when it comes to functions. In terms of when you pass a string to a function, if you think of it as passing the value of the string, you will almost never be wrong. You will almost never be wrong. To follow up question, David, are separate memory addresses made each time the function runs? Yes, so every time we modify a string, we create a new memory address. And it doesn't necessarily reuse the memory address from last time. It's incredibly unpredictable what memory address will be used. Alright. So with that, let's take a minute and let's briefly just review variable scope. So first, some other concepts to note. A variable only exists in the scope you create it. That doesn't just apply the functions. For example, if b dot equals cat. Sorry, this should just be equals, not content equal. B dot equals cat. Int y equals 7. System.out.println y. This line of code does not compile. And it doesn't compile because y doesn't exist. And you may think, but I just created y on line 42. How does y not exist on line 44 later? Because y is created inside of the if statement, it only exists until that scope is closed. So I could do something like y++ here, and that's fine. But I cannot do y++ here. Because this y doesn't exist. The same is true with loops as it is with conditionals. So a variable exists from the time it's created until the scope it is created in is closed. Now, if I instead say this, int y equals 7, if b equals cat y plus plus print y, this is fine. Y is created before the if statement, therefore y exists both in this scope and in anything inside this scope. So this scope, y exists because it's created after y. But if I move y inside of the if statement, y does not exist outside of it. This is variable scope. When y is in the if statement, it only exists if the condition is met. It doesn't exist outside of the scope even if the condition is met. So in this case, this would absolutely be true. Like if I say this, system.out.println y, this is going to print 8. Right? But so this condition is true. We entered the if statement. But even though we entered the if statement, y still doesn't exist. This is different from Python. In Python, y would exist on line 45. In Java and in most programming languages, y does not. Y does not even exist, even though this statement is true. And by the way, I'm very happy to see people using the clips feature. Hopefully it's not me knocking the camera over and making fun of myself, although I bet one of those clips is in fact that. Anyway. Are there any questions? So y must exist in the scope that this exists in. So if I define y in main anywhere above this line, then y exists. But a variable exists from the point it is created. So let's look at the scope of b. From the point it is created until the scope it is created in is closed. So anywhere I've just highlighted, you can reference b. But you cannot reference b after the scope closes. The same is true if that scope is a function or a condition or a loop. So similarly, for example, y does not exist in this else statement because y exists from the point it's created until the scope is closed. I don't want to say if statements are treated like functions because I don't think that's accurate to say. It just means that a variable exists in the scope it's created, and any subscope. So, for example, this if statement is a subscope. This if is a subscope of main. It exists inside of main. Same with this else. The else is not a subscope of if. They are different scopes. It just means that a variable exists in the scope it's created, and anywhere that is a more narrow scope, but not a broader scope. I don't want to go so far as to say if statements are like functions, because I think that maybe sends the wrong message, and I wouldn't say that's explicitly true. Last thing I want to start talking about are nested loops, and I want to spend some time on that. And I'm going to start with a pretty simple example. Remember how I said I was going to show you how to make a deck of cards? Well, you are now going to learn how to make a deck of cards. First, I'm going to create a string array deck equals new string 52. Because every deck of cards has 52 cards. From there, I'm going to make a string array of suits equals, and the standard suits are diamonds, clubs, hearts, and spades. I'm then going to make a string of values. This is an array 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace. So I've created 2 arrays that list all of the suits and values that exist in a deck of cards. And what I want to do is I want to make every pairwise combination of these, by which I mean diamonds. I need a 2 of diamonds, a 3 of diamonds, a 4, a 5, all the way up to ace of diamonds. Then clubs. I need a 2 of clubs, 4 of clubs, 6 of clubs, 7 of clubs, so on. Then hearts, then spades likewise. So what I can do is I can use a nested loop. And I'm going to say first, for string S in suits, or actually we can say string suit in suits, then for string values, or string value in values. Now I also need, and I'm going to insert the first card at deck 0, the second card at deck 1, etc. So I'm going to keep track of a separate index, deck index initially 0. I'm going to say deck index equals value plus of plus suit. And then deck index plus plus. And as a result of doing this, system.out.println arrays.toString deck. And if I did this correctly, when I run this code, 2 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds, 4 of diamonds, all the way up to ace of diamonds, then 2 of clubs, 3 of clubs, 4 of clubs, all the way up to ace of clubs, then 2 of hearts, and so on. This is a nested loop, a loop inside of a loop. The most common place that you use a nested loop is by making pairwise comparisons, or pairwise groupings. In this case, for every element in this, I need to do something with every element in this. Another example is when you need to do a pairwise comparison with yourself. To this end, to practice nested loops, we are going to write a function, and I'm going to use this as the break, so work on this over the break if you want. Jump in Discord, help each other out. Public void, or public static void, print closest to int array arr. And what this function needs to do, take in an array of integers and print the 2 values that are closest together. Print the 2 values that are closest together. It doesn't return anything, it just prints. I'll give you a hint. To get started, you can assume at first, and then you have to prove this or disprove it. You can assume at first string closest pair equals string plus array 0, comma, plus array 1. Wait, why does it not like... Oh, I forgot a plus sign. You can also assume at the end you're going to write system.out.println closest pair. The last hint I will give you is int min difference equals math.abs, which is short for absolute value, array 0 minus array 1. In here, there is a nested loop in between these two lines. So hop in Discord, work with each other, see if you can come up with this solution. And if you can't, no worries. We will come back to this solution after the break, and then we'll jump into ArrayLists. I will take this break until 2:09 p.m., so we'll be back then. All right, we're going to jump back into it here. So with that, don't know how far people got, but I'm now going to try to at least diagram out a solution. So let's say, for example, that this were our array. My strategy is going to be to start with the first value. And we have those two variables I mentioned. We have the closest pair, which is a string that currently contains 8, 15. And I know technically I'm not doing stack and heap drawing, so you can just assume closest is this string, even though technically it's a pointer, you get the idea. Then I have min difference, which I'm just going to abbreviate to min diff. And the min difference is the absolute value of 8 minus 15, or positive 7. And I always do my 7s. Anyway, from there, I want to compare 8 to every value to the right of it. So I want to compare 8 to 15, and 8 to 11, and 8 to 6, and so on. And I want to keep going until I find the smallest difference. But I don't just want to find the smallest difference of 8 to any other number, because if you look at this array, you'll notice the closest pair is actually 11 to 10. So in addition to comparing 8 to every value to the right of it, I'm also then going to compare 15 to every value to the right of it. I don't need to compare 15 to 8, because 8 will already be compared to 15 in this loop. But I need to compare 15 to 11, 6, 2, and 10. Then I need to compare 11 to 6, 2, and 10. Then I need to compare 6 to 2 and 10. Then I need to compare 2 and 10. This is an exhaustive approach to this problem. So, let's first describe how this array is done. Just this one array. Or just this one loop, excuse me. How do we compare 8 to every other number? Well, I could say something like, first, for now, assume int I equals 0. That is the index of the array value containing 8. So 0. Then, for int j equals I plus 1. That is every value to the right of I. Looping while j is less than array.length, the length of the array, j plus plus. I would say something like, first, if array I minus array j, and I want to get the absolute value of this, the difference between, or the absolute value of the difference between the values I and j, if array I minus array j is less than our previous min difference. That is to say, if I found I and j are closer together than our previous minimum difference, then I need to update my minimum difference because I found a new minimum to be array I minus array j, because they're closer together, so that's my new minimum. And then I also need to update my closest pair. Not closet pair, closest pair. Update my closest pair to be sorry. And I'm gonna sorry about that. There's just having some hiccups here with my keyboard. To be array I and array j. So this is how I would find the closest value specifically to the first value, I equals 0. So this would give me the closest value to 8. And specifically, in this case, the closest value would be 6. 10 is just as close, but the way I wrote this loop, I would take the first closest pair, not the last. So this does not solve the problem. This only solves the problem of finding the closest value to I when I equals 0. But does anyone have any questions about this loop before we move on? Because if we don't get this, then there's no point in proceeding. So do you have any questions just about the section of code I've highlighted? From there, we now know how to change j, and to compare I to j, we need to know how to change I. Because we aren't just interested when I is this value, when I is here. We're also interested when I is here, and here, and here. So we move I 1 each time. And as a result, we can do that with just a simple loop for int I equals 0 as its initial value, I less than, now technically, for now I'm going to write array.length minus 1, and I'll explain why minus 1 in a second, I++. Then inside of the loop, we do exactly what we did before. We're just doing it now with a variable I rather than a constant I. And that's it. We're done. Let's go ahead and test this, make sure that it works. Int array r equals, let me see what I put on the whiteboard. It is 8, 15, 11, 6, 2, and 10. System dot, or I don't need to do system dot to print line. I just need to call print closest to array, and I'm done. And this should print 11 and 10. Let's test that. It does print 11 and 10. So I get the correct result. And if your result prints 10 and 11, that's also fine. But the key of this nested loop is learn how to solve. First, figure out what your inner loop is. That's always the first step. Second step is to figure out your outer loop. Any questions about this solution? And I will post it later. But are there any questions? This is the type of coding problem you might get on, say, the exam. Not exactly this, but a problem like this. A problem that may require nested loops. It may not require nested loops, too. Alright. So from there, we have one last topic to cover today. And as you'll notice, I do actually have slides up for that topic, which I may actually pull up this time, even though I typically don't like using slides. But the topic we're going to cover is ArrayLists. And ArrayLists, what material's on the quiz release today? Material on the quiz today is primarily functions. I don't think I have ArrayLists on the quiz today. I don't recall putting ArrayLists on it. But certainly functions, arrays, and data types are the primary components. Actually, it's almost entirely data types. It's almost entirely data types. So from there, let's talk about ArrayLists. So some of the problems that we've run into with arrays. Let's just take a minute and list. Let's make a list called Why Arrays Suck. And and I just want everyone, let's just have a little roast of Java arrays right now. Tell me what you hate about Java arrays. Go. As compared to, say, Python lists. You can't remove entries. You can't remove entries. Right? Okay? Any other? Predefined length. That's right. You cannot change the size of an array after it's created. Predefined length. It cannot be resized. And that's actually, these two things are linked. The reason you can't remove entries is because you have a predefined length. So that also means you can't add entries. here's one. It's a pain to insert earlier. That is to say, let's say we had an array as follows. Let's say we had an array like this. And for now, we're just going to say, right now our array has 5 values. We've left room for 6. And let's say we're trying to just use 0 as a dummy value. And let me go one step further and say that this array is in sorted order. So 18, 23, 27. Let's say I wanted to insert the value 9 while maintaining sorted order. Again, treating 0 like it's just an empty space. It can't be empty, it has to be a value. We're saying 0. If I wanted to insert 9, what I would have to do is I would need to insert 9 here, but I can't just insert 9. This 15 would get deleted. So I have to move 15 to here. Since I can't do that, because then 18 would get deleted. So I have to move 18 here, then 23 here, then 27 here. So I would have to go in reverse, copy the value 27, then 23, then 18, then 15 in order to be able to insert 9. That's the process I'd have to do. I'd have to do all of those copies just to insert one value. That's a pain. That requires a loop. They have to be homogeneous. I have bad news. Everything in Java that's a collection has to be homogeneous, but we'll go ahead and add it. Homogeneous. We'll add it to the list. So, ArrayLists solve these problems. ArrayLists are much easier to work with. So let's take a minute and let's look at how we can use a Java ArrayList. And I'm not going to upload, I will upload reference.java, which I've been working on. I'm not going to upload ArrayList demo because I've actually already uploaded it, and it has everything we're going to cover. So, public static void main string args. Let's make an array list of integers. And here's how we do it. We're going to define array list, capital A, capital L, and then I'm going to say in these little less than greater than symbols, integer. In these angled brackets, and I'm going to call this numbers. Equals new array list integer. Now, anytime you use an array list, it's not actually by default in Java. You have to import it. So if you just hover over this red line of shame, it will offer the suggestion import ArrayList.java, and you can just import that. Or just right at the top of your file, input java.util.ArrayList. And this array list of numbers is going to be like an array of integers, except this is resizable. This, you can add things in any order you want. You can remove elements. Hi, Morgan. That was Morgan Kitty just now. I think she got shy because I called her out. Morgan Kitty does not make appearances much on the stream. She is much more shy. So the way I can add values is just numbers.add 5. Let's make a meme. 8 numbers.add 6. Numbers.add 7. I'm just going to copy this. 5, 3, 0. And 9. This will create an array that, even better, I can print. And if I print this, there you go. It has the numbers in the order that I added them. Notice I never defined an initial size of this array list. This array list will be as large as I need it to be. As I add values, it expands to accommodate them. This is the basis of an array list. It is implemented with an array. There's an array under the hood. We'll talk eventually when we get to algorithms how that array works. Since if arrays aren't resizable, how can we keep adding to an array list? We'll talk about how it works eventually. But for now, just get into this idea of using this array list. Similarly, I can create an array list of strings. An array list of strings, we'll call it words, equals new array list string. And I can add, rather than calling add, I could create something like a string array lyrics equals Jenny I got your number. Something like that. And I could do words dot add all lyrics. Actually, sorry. No, I can't do it that way. I forgot because add all is actually only for collections and arrays aren't collections. Sorry. What I can do is for string L in lyrics words dot add L. System.out.println words. So the key here is this thing in the bracket determines what data type this array list holds. An array list is still homogeneous. It can only hold one data type. Now notice I don't say int, I say integer. There's a reason for this that when we talk about it, this has to be objects. We'll talk more about objects and classes tomorrow. Int is not an object. Integer is an object that functions exactly like an int. So it's kind of, you just think of this as int and you won't be wrong. Whereas this array list contains type words. We refer to this as generic. And what this allows me to do is this allows me to quickly create an array list of any data type I want. I can create an array list of numbers, doubles, booleans, strings, any data type. So we talked about scanner. I could make an array list of scanners if I wanted. You put whatever data type you want the array list to store in here. So it is still homogeneous. But it can be resized at any time. The key, though, is you cannot do this. System.out.println numbers. Sorry, my Morgan Kitty is playing and being adorable. But it is a bit loud. You cannot do the following. This does not compile. You do not access an array list like arrays. Instead, you use a function, .get 0. And when I use numbers.get 0, it prints 8, which is the value at index 0. Are there any questions so far? So let's take a look at the slides real quick. Here we go. Just make sure we hit on all the key points. So, as we talked about, and by the way, this is just a reminder of what we covered in the first half of class. But the idea is array lists can actually only store what is get. Get is a function that gets the value at that index. So these elements are added in order. So because they're added in order, this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, and so on. Get gets whatever index I put in. So if I instead said get 3, index 3 is 5. And so that is going to get the value at index 3, which is 5. So that prints that. The point is, unlike arrays, you cannot just say numbers 3. ArrayLists don't support this. They don't support the brackets. But they do support .get, and this works exactly the same way as the brackets do in an array. Pardon me. So advantages. They can grow and shrink. Can I use get for arrays? No, you cannot. No, you cannot. You have to use the brackets. And I want to stipulate and objects. We'll talk about that soon. Tianyu, technically that's called a constructor, and we'll talk about how constructors work tomorrow. But for now, just assume that anytime you want to create an array list, you need to do this. And actually, by the way, you can shorten this. You could write out this whole thing, new array list integer. You could also just write new array list, and the integer is implied in the right hand side. You have to put the data type in the left hand side. You don't have to put it in the right hand side. But you just always have to write this on the right hand side of the equal sign for array lists. We'll talk about why when we talk about objects tomorrow. So arrays can store both primitives and objects. Array lists can only store objects. That's why we have to use integer instead of int. If I write int here, this won't compile. The integer is an object class. We'll talk about the difference between an object and a class. But this is a class that models int exactly the same as the primitive data type int, but it wraps it in an object. And so this lets us kind of store primitive data type ints in an array list is kind of how we would do it. Data in an array list isn't required to be a single type. This is technically true. But for now assume they are homogeneous, because until we get to a topic called inheritance, array lists are going to be homogeneous. So that's probably a bit misleading. I may just delete that and re-upload. So this is part of something called collections, and we'll talk about this framework as well as some additional examples of this framework tomorrow. So, before you would need to declare the size of an array ahead of time. Here, you just say ArrayList equals myArrayList, and then you don't need to specify the size, because as you add elements, the array list will grow, and as you remove elements, which will show how that's done, the array list shrinks. So the object type is an angled bracket, so you can quickly make an array list of strings, integers, booleans, or any data type. This is why it's generic, and the advantage of this is that we have one class that can store both strings, integers, and booleans. And any data type. We don't have to define one separate class for array list strings, and a separate class for array list integers, and a separate class for array list boolean. Is there a limit to the size of an array list? The limit is when you run out of memory on your computer, then you can't add any more elements, and also your program will crash. So you have as much space as you have memory, and when you run out of that, then you're kind of SOL. So with array, I should note, just using arrays, notice we didn't have to import anything. We've never talked about importing anything until now. Now all of a sudden we have to import this Java util array list. That sucks, but whatever. We can deal with that. You must, with an array list, import Java util array list. You have to have that to use array lists. To add elements to an array, we would create an array of size 3, and then we could add the elements, but we couldn't, and we would add the elements just by changing the values at that address. But we couldn't do something like array 3.6 to make the array larger. Here, we can add as many elements as we going. It has no upper size limit other than the limits of your physical computer. Certainly, as I said, if your computer runs out of memory, you can't make your array list bigger anymore. So then from there, you have some different ways. We talked about how you can do something like array 0 to get the 0th index of an array, and you can do array.length. With an array list, we have those same functionalities. It's just they're written differently. So instead of using brackets, we use get. We cannot print system.out.println numbers.length. That doesn't exist. However, length can be accessed with size. This is a function that gets the size of that array list. And since this is a phone number, it has 7 digits. There's size 7. There's value 5 from get3. Any questions about get or size? You cannot set the size. You can't say number size equals anything. Size just tells you how many elements are in your list. So let's look at some other list functions. For example, if I had this array list lyrics, how would I check if lyrics contains got? How would I do that? What's the difference between size and length? Length is for arrays. There is no length value for array lists. So I can do system.out.println lyrics.length, because lyrics is an array. And I can also do system.out.println words.size, because words is an array list. But they are different things. There is no, I can't do lyrics.size because lyrics is an array, and I can't do words.length because words is an array list. So they're, they're the same functionality, but they're implemented 2 different ways. One for arrays and one for array lists, because they're different things. It would be like, how do you accelerate on a bicycle versus how do you accelerate in an automobile? You do different things, but the end goal is the same. Going faster. So from there, how would I check if lyrics contains got? Well, I would need to do something like a loop. I would do something like boolean found equals false for string L in lyrics. If L dot equals got, found equals true, break, system.out.println found. This is what I would need to do in order to find contains in an array. This is how you do it in an array list. Words.contains got. That's it. Hang on. This prints true. And it prints true because contains is a Boolean function that determines whether or not lyrics contain, words contains that value. Arrays do not have a function that does this. You have to do it with a loop. Array lists have a function that simply tell you whether or not the value is contained there. So arrays have these features, array lists have these features. Arrays simply do not have this feature. The only way to do it is to do it manually by yourself. ArrayLists, just call it contains method. It will do it for you. By the way, this function still uses a loop. It absolutely uses a loop. It's just you don't have to write it. The function already has it written. Similarly, if I say system.out.println contains penguin, well, that's false. Because the song, Jenny, which is what I'm kind of riffing on here, 8675309, does not contain the word penguin. Now that we know ArrayLists, should we ever use arrays anymore? Well, hold your horses. We don't know ArrayLists yet. There's still more things to cover today, but ArrayLists are more convenient than arrays. However, if you know the size of the thing you're using, if you know that something is constant size and will not change, arrays are actually faster. In terms of computationally, but not dramatically so. That said, if the size of the thing that you're measuring is very likely to change, ArrayLists should be used. And I will say that I mostly use ArrayLists significantly more than I use arrays. But you can't understand ArrayLists unless you understand arrays. So necessarily you need to cover arrays in order to talk about ArrayLists. So ArrayLists are significantly more convenient. And on the homework, you will almost exclusively use ArrayLists. Almost exclusively, if not... the homework 0, you use arrays. Coding bad. But homework 1 and beyond, you will almost never use arrays. You will use ArrayLists. So we've talked about contains. And here are a bunch of methods. So we have add, we have contains, which we've talked about. Is contains case sensitive? Yes. And that's because Java strings are case sensitive. So when it comes to strings, Java is always case sensitive. So the equals function is case sensitive. System.out.println will.equals will is false. These two strings are not equal because they have a different case. But if I change this to uppercase will, then they are equal. There is a function which you can use. Contains will not use this function. There's no way to make contains use this function. But contains has a function. Or, excuse me, strings, I should say, have a function. Strings have a function. Equals ignore case. And this function will make it case insensitive if you ever need to do that. But I will say that I use that rarely, but I still use it. Generally, the only time I use equals ignore case is when I'm doing something with user input, because I don't want the user to have to get the case correct. Anyway. From there, let's take a look at the set function. So right now I have this ArrayList words, which is Jenny, I got your number. Let's say, for whatever reason, we were making a Weird Al parody of this song. And maybe instead of your number, what else could we get from Jenny? PG rated. PG rated. What else could we get from Jenny instead of her number? PG rated. Very, very clear about that. Sign. You got Jenny's sign. Okay, I don't know why you stole... was this a sign on her lawn? I'm fine with this. I just want to make sure that I'm... a sign. Jenny, I got... do people just have sign? Is that a normal thing that people just have sign? Oh, Zodiac sign. No, I'm not doing Zodiac sign because... See, I like to live in the real world, and Zodiac is just stupid. And I really believe that. So let's go with textbook instead. So, words.set. What is the index of number? It is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to set index 4 to be textbook. System.out.println words. And from there, now it says, Jenny, I got your textbook, because the set function changed the value at index 4 to textbook. Now, it very specifically has to go in the order of index first, value we're changing it to second. And here's where that can get a bit tricky. Let's try to do the same with numbers. Let's change this 8 to a 4. The way I would change 8 to a 4, it could be numbers dot set 0 4, or it could be numbers dot set 4 0. Which is it? Is it A or B? Write in chat now, A or B. Which would change index 8, the value 8 to 0, or to 4, I mean. The value 8 to 0. A, exactly. This one. If we did it the other way, we would change index 4 to 0. So it's the index, then the value. Now, there is also words.remove 4. So we've seen set, so now let's look at remove. Remove 4 means remove index 4. And when I try that, it's Jenny, I got your, and then it's like the ending of Sopranos. It just cuts off and no one knows what happened. Which is probably a dated reference for the audience I'm talking to, but whatever. Jenny, I got your, and the last element is removed. If I change this to remove 2, going to be Jenny, I, your number. I removed got. So it removes the value at index 2. Similarly, if I remove 2 here, it's going to be 865309. The 7 will be gone if I do this for numbers. So you can see that numbers is now, well, sorry, I forgot I also had the set. So let me, it's 865309. The index 2 is removed. There's another use for remove. You can remove a value at an index, or I could do this. Words.remove Jenny. And this will remove the first instance of the word Jenny. Now, I want to be clear, this only removes the first instance. If, for example, I do words.add Jenny, system.out.println words. Oh, sorry, not words. Yeah, words. That was right. Let me comment these out just so they're not crowding up the print space. Notice it says, Jenny, I got your number, Jenny. When I say remove Jenny, it does not remove every instance of Jenny. It only removes the first. There is also remove last. I thought there was a remove last. Maybe it's remove right. I can't remember the name of the function. There is a function that removes the last element. Or maybe it's find last. I could be confused there. Forgive me for that. If I want to remove every instance of Jenny, I can do, and forgive, I need to mute Discord here 1 sec. Sorry. Someone is messaging me during class, and I forgot that I had it active. Fixing. Anyway. If I want to remove every instance of Jenny, the easiest way to do that is while words.contains Jenny, words.remove Jenny. And now if I do that, all the Jennies are gone. I want to note something about this remove function, though. Notice how words.contains is Boolean. It's Boolean because it returns true or false. Words.remove is also Boolean. System.out.println words.remove. So it prints true because I did remove Jenny, and then it prints true because I did remove Jenny. Because remove is Boolean, I can actually do something weird here. While words.remove Jenny. That will remove Jenny from the words list. That will remove every instance. And that may seem weird. But the reason is words.remove is Boolean. And so when Jenny is in the list, we remove Jenny and return true. If Jenny is not in the list, or for example, I do system.out.println words.remove penguin. That prints false because the word penguin is not in the array list to remove. So this is actually a way to remove every instance. And while that looks weird, it is completely valid. However, words.remove2 is not Boolean. If I print the output of words_remove2, this is what happens. It prints got, and let me change that to print line just to make it more clear. It prints got, and then it removes got from the... So I start with this array list. I remove index 2, which is got. So that's what words_remove2 returns, the string. And then Jenny I, your number. So remove with a number returns the value of the thing removed. Remove with an object, in this case a string, returns a Boolean. Are there any questions about the two different versions of remove? We've covered two different versions. Jenny, or remove with a number, returns the value at that index. Remove with a word returns whether or not that word was removed. So here's a puzzler. Come back up here. And let's numbers.remove 0. Which value is going to get removed? This is a question now. Is it index 0? Or value 0? Which gets removed? Index 0 or value 0? Write index or value in chat. Which is this one going to remove? Index 0, correct. If I print this, it will print 8. And then when I print the list of numbers, it will be missing that value 8. So the question is, how could I remove the value 0? Well, this is where you have to pay close attention. This is not an int. This is an integer. And there's a way that you can create an integer object. And this is how you would do it. So if you have an array list of numbers, this is how you can remove an example of a number. Numbers.remove new integer. Let's go with 0. This would not remove the value at index 0. This would remove the value 0. And why this works, why the new keywords there, we'll talk about tomorrow. This is creating an object. We'll talk about it, like why we would do this, how we do it tomorrow. But just to illustrate, this removes the value 0. So this is going to print true. So it prints true, and now notice 0 is also gone from the list of numbers. Any questions about that? So this is creating, because notice, this is not int. This is integer. You don't have an increment in the loop. While loops don't have increments by default. You only need to put in an increment if for some reason you need an increment. So while loops are actually useful when you don't know how many times you're going to loop. You're waiting on an unpredictable event. In this case, with that loop, Shijun, in this case with that loop, the condition we're waiting for is for words to no longer contain Jenny. And we don't know how many loops that will take, so we don't need an increment. If we knew how many loops it would take, we would just do a for loop. And then we would have an increment. So again, this is not an array list of ints. It is an array list of integer. And those are two different things. 0 is an int. Now, technically, 8 is an int, but Java's automatically going to convert this 8 into an integer 8. Integer is an object. It is a data type that is different from int. Integer is actually a reference data type, like strings. It's also immutable, like strings. But we won't get too deep into the weeds on that. This is just to say, if you want to remove from a list of integers a particular number, then this is a way to do it. If you want to remove an index, you can just still do this. You don't need to do this unless ArrayList is type integer. So like with ArrayList string, I didn't need to say new string Jenny or anything like that. No, because so the question was, can you do the remove new integer thing with strings? Well, actually, the answer is yes, but it wouldn't do anything. Because this array list doesn't contain integers. It contains strings. So, for example, you can actually call, and this gets to the next point, I can do words.contains new scanner system.in. We've talked about this before, the scanner class. And let's go ahead and import this. You may think, wait, this doesn't make sense. Scanner's not a string. You can put anything in here. You can put any object at all in contains. And it will simply return false if it's not a string. If I print this, it will print as false, just to illustrate that. You can do this with contains. And here's the best metaphor I can use to explain why this is false. If you walked into a GameStop, which is a video game store, if you walked into a GameStop and said, I would like to buy a birthday cake, you can do that. The answer's just going to be no, we don't have birthday cakes. If you walk into a GameStop and ask, show me your birthday cakes, they're going to say, we don't have any. GameStop doesn't crash because you asked, where are the birthday cakes? GameStop doesn't fail to compile because you asked, where are the birthday cakes? They're just going to say, no, we don't have any. So you can ask if an array list of strings contains any object, whether that be a scanner, or whether that be a new integer array, or whether that be a new integer. And the answer is always no. Unless it's a string. If it's a string, then the answer may be yes or no. So the answer in this case is no, but it could be yes because it's a string. The point is, it would be like going into a store that doesn't sell strings and asking, or going into a store that only sells strings and asking for something it doesn't have. It will just say no. It doesn't crash, it doesn't fail to compile. The same is true with remove. So anything that works with contains also works with remove. So I could do remove new int 5 and the answer will always be false. The answer will always be no, I can't remove that because it doesn't exist. So you can do it, it's just that it's not going to do anything. Similarly, I could say numbers.remove banana. And banana is not a number. This compiles, this runs, it will just always return false and it will never remove anything because obviously banana is not in a list of integers. Any questions about that? Pardon me. Okay. Finally, there's index of. Index of works the same way as contains, more or less. The only difference is, instead of saying, whether or not contains it, let's do system.out.println words.index of got. Need to make this a string. Got. This is going to print 0, 1, 2. So it's going to print the number 2. And that's the index of got. Similarly, there's last index of, and that just gets the index rather than from left to right, the first instance, it gets the first instance right to left, or the last instance. Index of, again, I could do something like new int 5. And it's just, in this case, well, first let's show you what happens when index of, when you look for something that's not there, like the. If I look for the word the, which isn't in my list of words, it prints -1. And that means, the reason it's printing -1 is whenever you have like a find, -1 just means it's not here. Otherwise, you'll get an index 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. You'll get a positive number, or a 0 if it's the first element. But if the element is not there, we use -1 to mean it's not here. And if I were to search words for new integer 3, that's just going to be -1 because obviously the integer 3 is not an array list, is not inside of an array list of strings. If the word appears twice, it only returns the index of the first instance. So in this case, that is 0. Because this Jenny is at index 0. And while this Jenny is at index 5, we don't get there. Because we found 0 and we're done. But last index of will return 5. Which is where the second, or the last Jenny is. If I had 3 Jennies, it would still give me the last Jenny. Any questions? We're almost there. We're almost done. There's a lot more functions. These are the ones that you should get familiar with. There's a lot more functions. So I've kind of demonstrated with Eclipse, you can loop in 2 different ways over an array list. You can use the for loop, where instead of using bracket I, you use get I. And this works fine. You can also loop with that for each loop, which we've shown, which loops over every element. Remember, the same rules apply. If you need the index, And if you're modifying values, you need the index. Then you always need to use the for loop as written here. Otherwise, if you just are reading the values, you can get by with the shorthand method, the for each loop. Array lists are reference objects, so everything I talked about with arrays in terms of passing to functions, array lists works the same way. So quickly, if I went back to my reference and I added a function, instead changes to an array list, the same behavior would still apply. It would still look like pass by reference because you're passing the memory address. Array lists are mutable, obviously, because, you know, we have an add function and a set function and all those. That changes the array list, so it is mutable. From there, that's pretty much generally, if you know, array lists, there's no situation where you use an array that you can't use an array list. Well, almost no situation. There are some things that you can do everything you can do with an array list with arrays, including expanding the size. You just have to make new arrays. It's just less efficient, and it's a lot harder to do. So there's no downside really to using arrays. So that we're actually going to be done lecturing there, and we're just going to pull up today's in-class activity. So I've already uploaded a file called duplicates.java. You need to write a method remove dupes that will take in an array list and remove, or excuse me, sorry, I should say effectively create a new array list that is all of those elements removed. So, just to illustrate what I mean, if I had an array list 5, 3, 5, 1, 3. This function should take in this array list and output a new array list that is just 5, 3, and 1. Use the array list functions to do this. I encourage everyone to jump into Discord and help each other. And that is today's in-class activity. The instructions, by the way, are written on Colab under the assignment heading. So if you go to assignments, you'll see daily assignment number 3. All the directions are there. With that, are there any last questions related to the class? And then I'll go back and answer the 2 kind of game-related questions at the beginning of class. But I don't want people to think that's relevant at all to the course, because it's not. Are there any questions about any of the material we covered today? Pardon me. Daily assignments don't allow for resubmission. I thought I had been setting them up so they do. Let me... By the way, you're just seeing how this works. Allow resubmission, unlimited, but still due today. Yeah. There you go. It now allows resubmission, and I'll try to do that every day. I know I did it day 1. I may have forgotten to do it yesterday. All right, let me go back. Oops, sorry. Let me go back to the beginning of class because there were 2 questions. What streams do you like to watch? I have been enjoying some of the Terraria Master Mode hardcore streams just because they have it's great when they succeed, and it's somewhat greater when they fail. And I suck at Terraria, but I love the game. It's really fun to play. Definitely fun. So I play actually with my grad school roommates. One of them lives out in California. He set up a server on his computer, and we've been playing Terraria after 1.4 came out, and had a lot of fun with that. What do you think of the new PS5? I think it looks ridiculous. I like the PS4 because when a PS4 is in the room, nobody notices because it looks like a Blu-ray player. It's very quiet in terms of furniture. And the PS5 looks like it belongs in an anime show, and not in a good way. I'm 32 now. I am supposed to be embarrassed about my gaming habit at this point, and so I want my video game consoles to kind of just disappear into the room. And the PS5 very much does not do that. It looks like an anime villain. That said, it has a good lineup of games coming out. I'm very excited about the Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, especially. Someday I'll even play Horizon Zero Dawn. I own it, but I've never had time to play it. You can put it on the side, but I really want I want a black model. Just because I don't want it to stand out. It's also just really hard to keep white things clean. Yes, I will be uploading the file from today immediately after class. It does look like a Wi-Fi router, yes. Here's what it looks like to me. It looks like, and I've never played World of Warcraft, but I'm familiar with some of the memes on it. Like in World of Warcraft, there's a running joke that the better your gear is, the bigger your shoulder pads are. It looks like a high-level World of Warcraft character. Really, really big shoulder pads. I gotta be honest, if the new Xbox had good games, I would play it, but Microsoft Game Studios have been kind of dismal for a while. I mean, Xbox One hasn't had a good first party game. And the couple of kind of good looking games they've had have shown up on Steam because they realize that their biggest base is actually the PC market now. So, I if Xbox had good first party games, I'd probably prefer the look of it, but PlayStation has Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, so it wins. I'm not going to buy one, by the way. Never buy the first run of a console. People who bought the first run of the Switch, their Switches are like 30, not that high, but it's certainly above a 10% failure rate. The PlayStation 4, I bought one at launch. Crapped out. Power supply failed. It was a problem that was known. They fixed it later. Xbox 360, Red Ring of Death. Never buy the first run of a console. Also, the second run of the Switches have better battery life and a better graphics card. That is actually true. And they didn't really make a big deal of it, but that is true. I'm not talking about the mini Switch. I'm talking about like the actual console. The second run had better battery life and better graphics card. All right, that's it. Take care.